Welcome to the Women Inspire Aspire podcast. In this podcast, I am talking to Dhirja Sharma about a very mystical topic, which is death.
Hi, Dhirja. Thanks for accepting my invite to appear in the podcast. Welcome back again. I'm quite excited to have you today to talk about a very important topic, which is death. I'm amazed that you are ready to talk about it and share your views, and I look forward for your inputs on this today. So let's get started. So, what are your thoughts on death?
Hi, Venkat. Thanks for the invite and also giving me this opportunity to be a part of your podcast. Interesting that you are amazed that I could talk about this topic. So, before I go further on, elaborate on my concept and various ideas around it, I would want to know that why were you amazed that anybody would want to talk about death?
Well, there are many who are not very comfortable talking about it. We are all excited by birth. We are all excited by life's experiences, life's celebrations, and so on. But nobody is actually, I would say, many of us won't be interested in death because it's something that we think like a taboo. We don't really talk about it or be open about it. I have very few people who would like to talk about it. I spoke to another doctor, neuro person in another podcast, and we spoke about the death for a bit. I mean, of course, it is a daily occurrence in all our lives, but we are not comfortable talking about it. So I'm very happy that some of us are ready to talk about it and share their views on how it happens and what is the science behind it and so on. You being in the medical field, I am very happy that you are willing to talk about it in a podcast.
You mentioned that death, the word itself, and even the concept and whatever we visualize when we hear this word is something that most of us are not comfortable with. Is a taboo in many places where people would not like to talk about it. So two things I get from you is that once it causes discomfort, maybe fear, maybe the discomfort is coming from fear, or the discomfort is coming from not knowing what it is, but just being afraid of the unknown and not wanting to talk about it. This itself is a very interesting observation, in fact, which I have made when I'm talking to you, that if there is life, there will be death. Death is a natural outcome of life, and we see that everywhere around us in nature. If there is a plant which is living, the leaves die day in, day out, and that is naturally accepted by that living form. The plant itself, the tree itself may die out after a season. Other animal forms are giving birth, living, and dying, and that is also happening throughout. So you see, the king of jungle, a lion, may be the most feared animal in the jungle, but when it gets old and feeble, it quietly goes to one corner, accepts the fact that it may soon not be able to live any longer, is not able to tend for himself, get food, and slowly starves to death. That is what is a natural death. But somehow, humans, because we have an intellect, we have thought a lot about this concept and come up with varied forms. So even if I were to say that you had asked me that what is the concept, what exactly is death? So before I go on further, let me just talk about the concept of death. I'm a practitioner of modern medicine, and in modern medicine, death is defined as cessation of breathing and heart. At one point, that was considered as death. Then slowly the concept of biological death or cellular level death came in. And then we started identifying that, okay, there is a death of an organism, and then we have death of the cells which form the overall part of organism. And later on, this concept of brain death came, where even though the person is breathing or is artificially allowed to breathe, but the heart is beating, but the brain, if it's the patient is deeply unconscious and has gone into a state of irreversible coma, then the patient is considered brain death. So now, interestingly, in modern medicine also, the concept of death has been evolving over time, and the exact moment when a person dies is not very clear. So a person maybe seems to be alive, but if he is considered brain dead, brain stem is only functioning, and even that is non-functional, then the person will be considered dead as understood in modern medicine. Culturally, in various ancient cultures and different societies, death was considered as different aspects. Some cultures and in some religions, death would be just the loss of vitality and the living force which has gone out of the body. Say in ancient Hindu religion, we would consider the living force which we consider as Atma. If Atma leaves the body, the person may die. But more than that, there was a strong importance given to breath, that is the prana. So when the prana would leave the body, a person would die. Then there were other cultures where they considered that the person, if his living force has gone, then he may go, the living force will continue, but the physical body of the person is dead. So then they say they would consider that it's basically just a transformation of a person from living body to spiritual body, which carries on and which lives forever. So these were different concepts of death. What I'm trying to say is that what we consider as death is not very clearly defined and has been taken as different concepts over different time and different ways. So in modern medicine, death is what we talked about: biological death, clinical death, and brain death. Now, interestingly, even if we were to go to, say, quantum physics and basic science, physical sciences, what is a human body? Human body is a dense congregation of trillions of atoms and molecules: carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, so many of them forming different molecules, and these molecules are densely aggregated to form the human body. When that human body transforms into another energy form. So for example, in some cultures and religion where the death body is cremated, we can see ourselves that the dense energy form contained in the human body is transformed into ashes. All the atoms and molecules are redistributed back into the earth and atmosphere. And different cultures also, from ash onto ash, from dust onto dust. So there is just basically transformation from one form of energy to another form of energy. Therefore, then, is actually death an end point of life, or is it just a transformation? These were different identifications and different concepts associated with that which were carrying on. Therefore, we had communities and societies where death was accepted as a natural occurrence during the course of life. But over time, this concept has changed. And why do you think this concept has modified over time, so much so that most of us are now fearful of the outcome of death? Why do you think, Venkat, such a transformation occurred? Or have you ever thought about it?
Actually, I'm not fearful, at least at this
Mm.
point of time. It's
Yeah.
just that people are feeling uncomfortable about death. So that's what I meant. So feeling uncomfortable is one thing, feeling fear is another thing, fear of the unknown is another thing. So these are all there. I'm more interested in the breath aspect. See, I've been trying to talk to people and figure out what exactly is breath. If somebody's breath is gone, and if you try to put a pump and try to pump the air into the nose, is the breath is going to come back? I mean, medically, it should happen. As a scientific thing, it should happen, because what you consider as breath is might be just air. But what exactly is breath according to science? Even according to science, what is breath? Once it goes, when the breath dies, why is it not coming back? Even if we try to apply some air into the body, or if we try some techniques to bring the breath into the body, it's not working. Why is that? Then what exactly is breath?
I don't know if you've read a very famous book by a neurophysician himself who unfortunately died of cancer. And his book is titled When Breath Becomes Air. And it exactly says what you're trying to say, that what is a breath? Breath is the air that we have taken inside our lungs, from which we have extracted the oxygen and given back carbon dioxide from our body, and then forced out this air back into the atmosphere. So breath is actually just air. but an air which has traversed throughout our body. That is actually what is breath. So when you say that can we artificially produce breath, yes, that's what we do day in day out when we put the patients on ventilator. This patient may be deeply unconscious or even under anesthesia. When we take away their capability to breathe, we provide the breath from outside through the machine known as ventilators. The air is pushed into their body. If the heart is circulating blood, then oxygen will be extracted by a living body and carbon dioxide will be given back into this air, and then this air can be removed through expiration. So breath will occur. But when we talk about breath as in, so I'm picking up here again the concept of prana because it may ring familiar to you only from that aspect. So when we talk about prana, we actually mean that the air which has come in with oxygen and air which has gone out with our with excess carbon dioxide, because there is a energy which is circulating through our body through the activity of each and every living cell which has utilized oxygen for its living metabolism and produce carbon dioxide out of that metabolic process. So this is actually what is physiologically happening when we talk about a breath. And that is how air becomes breath. But when we're talking about air becoming breath and that carrying on, so this initially when I was talking to you that again, there is a concept of death that even if we are able to provide this breath to the person is dead if the person is not conscious. It's irrevocably unconscious that the person is brain dead and is now considered in medical medicine as death. Therefore, in modern medicine, there will be a brain death, which is also considered as death equivalent to a clinical death, which is defined as cessation of breathing and heart. So these are the concepts which are there of clinical death in modern medicine.
Okay, so let's dive deep into the breath and the cells for a minute. I
Hmm.
am not really very concerned about the brain death at this point of time.
Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, that's one part of it, but I'm more concerned about the breath and how it connects to the cells. So
Yeah.
now you said that there are so many cells, and the cells are processing the oxygen and then giving up carbon dioxide and all that. So let's delve into that bit because when the death happens, it happens in a moment, probably some 1 or 2 seconds, and then it's just gone. So there are so many cells in the body. So how do the cells, all the cells, just stop in a second, in a moment, and then stop processing what they are doing? So that is something that I want to know.
Okay. So interesting that you asked this question because initially when I talked about biological death and I talked about clinical death. So a biological death may succeed clinical death. So what we're talking about here is that there is uh, death as one endpoint, but there is a lot of process which is going on, which is before. So that is the process of dying. So in process of dying, there may be some cells which have died earlier and some cells which are still in the process of dying. And even if there is a critical mass of cells which die in a particular organ, then that organ will die. So for example, if there's a critical mass of cells inside a heart which dies, then the heart will stop functioning and heart will die, and that will be shown as clinical death. And once the heart dies, the patient stops breathing, does not have the capability of to breathe because the centers which are controlling the breath, which are present inside our brain, and the muscles which are producing the action of breath, both the cells constituting these two organs may die. However, it's been seen that there is a difference between what we observe as clinical death and the biological death of cells in some organs, especially brain, which may linger longer than the clinical death. That is to say that a person may be considered as dead, but the brain cells may still show activity which is known which is conducive with life. Therefore, there have been some studies done now which say that the brain activity is still seen for some minutes post the clinical death for some time. That's one research which is going on, and there's a lot of buzz around that and talk which is going on. But basically, what happens, if I have to elaborate upon what happens when a cellular death occurs, is that basically their metabolism at cell level through mitochondria is mainly oxidative reactions which occur. And for these oxidative reactions, we need oxygen. And once that is transported to the cell has oxidative reaction to produce, currency of energy in cell, which is the ATP. For some time, if there is a cutout, if the oxygen supply gets cut out, then the cells can manage with reductive metabolism also. They have non-oxidative metabolism also, which can occur, but that is only up to some time. Beyond that, toxins will start accumulating in the cell, and ultimately the cell will die. Cell apoptosis will occur. So that's what is happening at the cellular level. But what we observe as breath is at the organism level, and it is a macroscopic or macro event which can be seen and felt. We can see a person breathing, we can feel their breath, and we can observe the different activities which are happening, like the muscles moving, the chest moving, and abdomen moving as a person breathes. So that's at the macro level.
Okay, wonderful. That's a fantastic explanation, and it clears a lot of doubt. And I think that's pretty much what I wanted to discuss in this podcast, because I wanted to know the scientific aspects of it.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing those valuable inputs to me.
Yeah.
I'm not really interested in the metaphysical aspects or the spiritual aspects of the death, and there are so many books and philosophies around that. So I'm not really worried about those things. I just wanted to ask, discuss the scientific aspects of this, and your explanation about the cells and how the cells operate and how they are connected to the breath was, pretty useful and pretty enlightening information for me. So thank you so much for sharing those information.
That's very interesting. But another aspect of death, which I wanted to discuss about, was the community and society-based concept of death. So, because there is a reason why I'm talking about it here today. Less than a century earlier, natural death and expected death was a community-based event. Most of it occurred at our homes. Our grandparents, if you recall, would have, and their generation, most of the people would die at home. But with advent of modern medicine, unexpected as well as expected death became institutionalized. Most of the deaths now which occur are occurring inside hospitals. If we differentiate death between expected and unexpected, so what I mean by unexpected death is, suppose a death occurring due to accident or natural disaster, or something which is there in a person who's otherwise healthy and suddenly dies. That's the unexpected death. But expected death is in a person maybe who's been suffering with a terminal illness for a long time, or a super elderly person who's reaching the end of her life. These expected deaths have also now moved into institutions of healthcare, and consequently these events of death have become very isolated and sometimes traumatic for the person who's suffering with the process of dying. And this, in fact, if I were to say that if earlier the societies were death accepting societies, most of the modern societies, most of us are now death denying or death defying society. In fact, modern medicine, and I'm a practitioner of modern medicine, says that you must prolong life however may you. We must do everything to defy death. So that has then given this whole twist to death, and in fact birth also, which is both events, most important events of life, are natural events, but now they have become unnatural or somehow devoid of their normalization or normal naturalization because of the way we are dealing with them. And the second aspect of this moving away of death from normal community to hospital is that most of us have lost the knowledge about the process of dying, like you were asking me just now, and even the skills associated with dealing with a person who's dying, with the result that most of us outside of healthcare setups are uncomfortable with the concept, not sure how to deal with it when we are faced with it. This was more apparent to us during the pandemic also, where we observed where patients were in total isolation and the impact it had on their psyche and their overall condition when they were ending end of life. It was a very traumatic experience for them, being away from their loved ones. So, in fact, there was a study done in Australia, and they realized that out of the expected death, 90% of the patients wished and wanted to be with their family and loved ones. And in the surroundings, they were familiar with objects and memories that they much cherished in the end of their life. So, therefore, we need to have this conversation regarding death in our communities and our societies again. We need to normalize the idea of talking about death amongst all of us so that we reclaim the lost knowledge of taking care of dying and death, natural death, that we had earlier in our societies and in our community. This is something that in palliative care we call as providing health in palliative care. And this term is something that we know call as death literacy. That is to say that we need to equip the caregivers and the community again with the concept of dying, the process of dying, and how to take care of people who are dying, who are in end of life, and where death is a inevitability, where it is expected in short term and not such short term. When such involvement of family, caregiver, and community occurs, the caregivers themselves have said that they feel transformed after that experience, and if given an opportunity would like to care for their other loved ones also at home when they're facing death. And it has been reported by many of them that they actually feel great humility. And when they come face to face with finitude of life and they see that this is what it means, and the compassion is increased. In fact, the study says that community also benefits by such an action, and the community and society as a whole becomes more compassionate and caring. So this is what I was arriving at when I wanted to talk about death. I wanted to start a conversation about death literacy, and all of us thinking about, is it that what something we would like to do for our loved ones?
Those are very valid and interesting thoughts. And I too feel that people should more know about the death process, and they should get involved. And as you said, death literacy is so important, should not be like a stigma. It should be considered as a natural process. But unfortunately, some of the hospitals these days, they keep the patient as much as ever possible in their facility for the sake of money, try to give a false hope to their family that, they can make the person live more days or more months and so on. It is happening. I have seen that. But as you said, palliative care is so important and community involvement is so important during the last days or the final moments, which transforms the community as well as the family. Thank you for sharing those thoughts. So thank you so much for appearing in the podcast and sharing your views. I wish you all the best in your work and whatever you aspire to do in your life. Take care and bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
That was a great podcast with Dhirja Sharma. Please subscribe to this channel and follow it for more awesome podcasts. Opinions expressed by the guests in this podcast are their own. The host or the sponsors of the podcast do not condone the opinions expressed by the guests or the actions arising out of those opinions. Any decisions or actions that the listeners might take as a result of listening to this podcast must be based on their own judgment and will be at their own risk. The podcast host or their sponsors will not be held responsible for the consequences of any actions and or decisions taken as a result of any content in this podcast.